Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And I was telling you before we started recording, Adrienne, that I'm kind of a fangirl of yours. Adrienne Ross is my guest today, and I discovered you just this last few months because of the WNBA.
Wow.
And you and I are both fans of the Fever and Caitlin Clark,
Yes.
and we share that as well as a lot of other things. So I'll just do a really quick bio. Adrienne Ross is an author, columnist, editor, speaker, and former teacher and coach. She was an English teacher, and I was telling you that my undergrad degree is in English.
Mhm.
And we both played basketball at one point. You coached basketball. I coached seventh and eighth grade girls basketball back in the day.
Ooh.
So we just have so much in common. Are you originally from New York?
Yes, ma'am.
So Hudson,
Born
New
and
York,
raised. Born and raised
born
from.
and raised, but not living there now. You're in Missouri?
I am in Missouri for the past several years, but until then, I was New York, New York City, and then upstate New York.
Gotcha, gotcha. So Adrienne is also an author, and she's written a book called Push Your Way to Purpose: How to Get from Where You Are to Where You're Meant to Be, which we also have a lot in common about, we can talk about. Also, you've done some, would I call them children's books, or are they illustrated?
They're not children's books. They
Okay,
are actually adult books, but they are illustrated.
okay. About your aunt.
Yep, on Alma. That's my
That's so great.
hashtag on Alma.
That's so great. So we could talk about a lot of other things, but let's just start with basketball.
Yeah.
What was it? Have you always been a Fever fan?
No, I have not. First of all, let me say thank you so much for the invitation to come on your show. I'm honored to be here. And you start right away asking about the Fever. No, I've been a person who is respected. Tamika Catchings back
Mhm.
in her days of playing for, going back to when she played for Coach Pat Summitt at Tennessee. And so she's always been on my radar because she's just a phenomenal player. But I wasn't really zoned into the Fever per se. In fact, I wasn't watching the WNBA for years. Started off watching for years, and then I've taken a long break. But Caitlin Clark, you just mentioned her, she's brought me back to the WNBA, and therefore I'm parked at the Indiana Fever also.
I love it. That's me too. Who do you have in Missouri as a team? Like, who would you all follow?
Well, we have, when you talk about, baseball, obviously you're talking
Sure.
about the Cardinals, or when you're talking about football, you're talking about the Chiefs. As far as basketball goes, I got the Fever. They're pretty close. I mean, they're within like 4 hours or so.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, yeah.
They're not close to me, but I don't care because
I
I'm
don't care. Yeah.
so grateful that there are so many televised games this year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the Clark effect.
Yeah. And you've talked about that on your podcast quite a bit. So I've been following you for probably 3 months. How long have you been doing this podcast?
I've had the podcast for since 2021.
Okay.
But and the podcast is, the tagline is A to Z, Adrienne is on it. Whether you're talking about the podcasting or whether you're talking about my writing, that's the way it's been. And so I've talked about sports here and there, but I've never been so engrossed in the conversation about sports as I am right now. It's just a whole lot.
And I love that you say the sports edition. So we always kind of know when I'm tuning in, I know what you're going to talk about. And I have seen way more sports editions than anything else that I've been watching you.
Oh yeah, it's been a lot of that, because you know what? Honestly, you hear what people are saying, and people are really fascinated by women's basketball. It's an amazing time for women's basketball right now. It's a key moment. And so I love, like you said, I played, I coached. I've always been a sports enthusiast. And so when you hear people saying, give me more of that, you're able to tap into the sports. Now, I will say this. I do a lot of talk about culture or faith and politics and all that. We kind of reached a time for many people where they want to break from some of that stuff. I thought maybe sports would be that break. It's not. It
It's-
might be worse. Sports is a microcosm of society, and it might be even more political. So I guess I can't get away from it.
But maybe, what do you think that is? What would you attribute that to? Why are people in that space these days?
It's just where we are. We are so, it's almost like, to a certain extent, people look to be offended
Mm.
even. And so no matter what you say, no matter what the venue, no matter what the conversation, even if you're not talking about politics per se, someone will say something. I've done posts on social media over the years. It's nothing to do with that. And somebody will be like, oh, yeah, it's just like, some politician,
Mhm.
and we're just so wired to be on the defense all the time. But again, sports, it's life, and people carry their biases, their passions, all of that into the sports arena also. It
Yeah.
just is what it is.
Yeah, it's so
Wired
funny.
for it. I'm wired for it, I guess.
Yeah, you are, because you handle it really well from what I've been observing. And I wonder if it's that we just need an outlet for some of this angst that is kind of existential these days. There's this like heaviness about so many things. And
Yeah.
like you, I thought maybe sports would be the place to get it out and just enjoy it. But it seems that way to me too. A lot of
Yeah, and everyone's so on edge. Like I did a couple. I don't know if you saw them, but I like to laugh and stuff, and so I did a couple lighthearted videos, and it's obvious that I was just having fun, and it was supposed to not be seen as real. And I said it several times,
yeah.
but still, you get the people who just, that's not true. You're lying, and I'm like, well, I'm not lying. I just said we're having fun, but English was your major. I was an English teacher. We know comprehension isn't everybody's strong place. So
That's such a good way to say it. Oh
it's
my
so
God.
true, right? I'm
It's so
like, pay
true.
attention here, right?
I'm reading a book now, and if you pardon me, listeners, I've spoken about this book so much in the last couple of months, but the book is called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And
Mm,
it makes it so simple. It just breaks everything down to above the line and below the line.
mhm.
And above the line is conscious, below the line is unconscious. So
Okay.
above the line, when you're conscious, you are open, curious, and committed to learning.
Hmm.
When you're below the line, you're closed, defensive, and committed to being right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is what you've just described.
Hmm.
We have so much unconsciousness because we're so, I don't know, we're so worried about being wrong or something. I don't know.
Yeah. It's sign of the times. It's just
It's-
a tough time,
So if you go, let's just go spiritual for a second. Let's just go, I mean, like there's something going on. I,
Oh, without a doubt. There's definitely something going on. It's a lot. Ultimately, and I hate to say this because some people were like, oh, that's wrong. Ultimately, a lot of what we face, it's just good versus evil,
Mhm.
and so you can't, we try to compartmentalize certain things. It bleeds over into everything. And so, and we want to be right, that piece about being right. And so if we detect, and we define right as in agreement with me, right? That's
Yeah.
what we
Yeah.
define right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when we see just an inkling of something that goes against what we deem the right way to do, our opinion, we're just ready to blow the whole joint up. I
Mhm.
mean, for real. I've said, like, I talk about various things, not just sports, but there are new people to my channel because it's growing tremendously. And so there are people who didn't know that I talk about other things. So then they come in and they realize that I do, and they get mad and say, well, I'm taking my toys and I'm going home because you don't think just like I think. And I'm like, that's like going into the supermarket, realizing that they sell Apple Jacks. You don't like Apple Jacks, so you just knock down all the cereal boxes,
Yeah.
and you don't just leave. Like, you got to tell them you're leaving, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you don't just exit. You got to make a scene before you go, right? That's where we are, and that's unfortunate.
Mhm.
And it makes me sad, actually. Sometimes you got to laugh it off,
Mhm.
but it does make me sad sometimes because we miss out on a lot. We can agree to disagree, can't we?
I would hope so. I mean, that's why I'm doing the work I'm doing, and I'm guessing that's why you're doing the work you're doing.
Yeah.
Some of, I don't know how you would, if you would agree with this, but it feels like there's work to be done, important work to be done as a calling. I know you're an ordained minister as well.
Mhm.
So that's a calling. I
Yeah.
don't have to feel like I have to be an ordained minister to feel like I'm following a calling.
Oh yeah. No, no, not at all. I mean, and actually you mentioned that, and I was just like, oh yeah, I guess I am. you know but our life should be a calling. I
Mm,
taught English for nearly 20 years, and I coached for 6 of those years, and every bit of every day, with every literature piece I did or conversation I had with a student, is ministry.
Mm.
Everything we do is ministry. It's, you know, it's about pouring into other people and trying to make a difference. And for some people, it looks different. You know, you don't have to stand behind a pulpit to be a minister.
Mhm.
You know, what you're doing right now is ministry when you're doing what is right, when your heart is right and you're doing what's right, you know. And for me, and I pray for everyone, when the Lord is at the center of it all, then I want him to get the glory. And then it's just ministry, you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
and it outlives us prayerfully, you know.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It outlives us. If we're, I'm going to take this to business book for a second, a business book, but it's kind of all connected in my world. I read a lot of business books, but there's a spiritual element to a lot of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one that I really like that just occurred to me right now is The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, who talks
Okay.
about playing a finite game like basketball, which
Mhm.
has a winner and a loser, and at the end it's done,
Right.
and an infinite game, which is playing for the love of playing the game. You might
Right.
have wins and losses inside, but you're playing for the love of the game.
Yeah.
So if you think about business in that way, if you have a business that has a 5-year plan for as long as you're there and then you're there to sell it, you're playing a finite game, not an infinite game.
Right. Right.
And I like that you said that lives beyond us, because if we're playing life as an infinite game, then our legacy is going beyond us. It has to.
Yeah, yeah, we want that to be the case, you know, that I leave a mark of some sort. And again, it might not be the mark, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
someone else feels is valuable, but you know, the one you touch is as important as the million you touch, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And it blows, let me tell you this, it blows my mind that basketball can be a part of that.
Mm.
And I even as early as this morning, I'm praying and saying, okay, God, make sure you keep me on the road you want me to be on, because I was doing all the political stuff. I was doing all the other stuff and all the other conversations, the bigger things that I do believe are part of my calling. And yet then I found this door, wide open door when it comes to sports.
Mhm.
And yet I see the hand of God in that also.
Mhm.
I don't understand it all, but I see God's hand in it and I just want to navigate it responsibly.
Yeah.
It's kind of an odd place for me right now.
Well, and in my observation of it, for you doing that, you being that, I wanted to ask you this too. How is it that you feel so confident in expressing and declaring your perspective on things? Because sometimes I get to the point where I'm like, who's going to be offended? Oh, and I don't always say exactly what I want to say. And I
Mhm.
really respect that you're doing that.
Well, it's interesting because for years, whether it's my writing or, you know, I speak or whatever it is, I've had people at times say, you know, wow, you're bold. Like I had the column in the newspaper
Mm,
for several years, and people would say, wow, you're just so bold and courageous. And it was so weird because I didn't look at it like that.
mm,
I'm just like, this is what you call bold. What are you going to do when the really hard stuff comes? Right. So I never looked at it in terms of being bold or courageous. I was just speaking, I was just writing. I just, you know, and then when attacks come sometimes,
mm,
you come to realize what they mean. Like
mm.
it can be a bit overwhelming if you like, if you just constantly digest all that, it can
Yeah.
be overwhelming. And the same thing when you get the praise sometimes, and you're just like, it can be, that can also be overwhelming because you're just like, listen, I live with me. I know kind of, you know, I know what kind of, how wild I can be sometimes, you
Yeah.
know? And so, I don't know. I just, there's a certain confidence, I think, in knowing that God is with me. And, I mean, hey, I don't know. I just go with it.
I know. I love that. I think about the way that you're observing Caitlin and the way that people are really attacking her as well.
Yeah,
And part of me says, how can you possibly attack Caitlin Clark? There's nothing to attack. And
exactly.
right. And then I look at the comments from the people who are attacking her, and I'm so grateful that she is not seeing it because she's saying it, she's off social. And so I'm glad, because they're, in my observation, I'm seeing who people are and the people who,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. In fact, I actually, you know, I've written, like you said, I've written 3 books, and I think I have the topic of my next book. I
Yeah.
think, and and it is a result of Caitlin Clark, because I truly believe, as weird as this might sound to some people, the same thing with like sports. When I say I think there's a bigger picture here, I really believe that her presence, her coming on into the spotlight, is a bigger thing than basketball. It has revealed what we see in our culture and what we maybe thought was healed, but is
Mm,
not. It has placed a finger on some ugly stuff, but it has also placed a finger on some beautiful stuff.
mm.
And I think her legacy might be more than the logo threes and the incredible passes. It is what she has shown a light on in our culture, much of which needs work.
Oh, that's so good. And I hope that she doesn't feel that as a heaviness. I hope
Yeah.
that she feels that as a, as we said earlier, as a calling, or I don't know if
Yeah.
she analyzes it as much as you and I do.
You know what? Listen, the girl is just like, and I say the girl, some people get offended when I say that, and that's just basketball talk.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
the woman she says, I'm just here for the basketball.
yeah.
And I think sometimes they try to trap her. They have tried to trap her into getting really political and really, the whole, they want her to take on the whole world. And she's just like, I'm a girl from Iowa. I like basketball.
I know. I
Like,
know.
you know what I mean? If you're doing bad, cut it out. Like,
Yeah,
if you really needed me to say that, okay, I'll say it. But
right.
now give me the rock. Okay,
Yeah,
let's play
exactly.
ball.
Exactly.
Let you guys can do all that other stuff. You know,
She does that really well too. And she's so
amazing.
mature in her
She is.
interviews.
You can see her upbringing and with her parents, but also probably where she grew up.
Mm,
And I know that she has her degrees in marketing, and so she's media savvy.
mm,
They want to find something to trap her,
mhm.
and she's very difficult. You're not going to get that out of her. I mean, maybe one day she's just like, you know what,
Right.
but right now, we don't see any signs of that. She's very, very good at that. And that you said, well, what is it about her that could make somebody, be ugly about it? In part, that's it for some. Like
Mm,
they can't figure out what buttons to
mm.
push to get her to blow up at these people or, retaliate. You just don't see it.
How that just, that just floors me. That's some people's purpose, is to be the dream killer and to shoot people's things down. I just don't understand that, because that's not in me. But
Yeah. Well,
I,
they don't think she deserves it.
oh,
We could get really deep into that. Into that, but they don't. There are people who don't think, and I'm not saying everyone. I never want to sound like
right,
it's everyone,
right, right.
but there are a lot of people, and they've said it. There are even journalists who have written about it, that she should not have the spotlight on her because she's white, that she's not the face, she shouldn't be the face of the league. That whole conversation. I get attacked a lot from people who, because I like Caitlin Clark, I'm a sellout. I've an Aunt Jemima, I'm an
Oh
Uncle
my
Tom.
God.
I mean, it's amazing the stuff. And so, I'm a bit sarcastic, so I can really come back at people. I gotta watch myself in that way. But it really is sad that here we are in 2024, and there are people who feel like you should determine what basketball player you watch or what team you like, or even who you vote for based on skin color.
Mhm.
It's a sad, sad thing, but something about Caitlin Clark and then, of course, Angel Reese, they want to put, the two
Mhm.
against each other. It has brought up a whole lot of stuff that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Absolutely does.
What I find so fascinating is how many Black male athletes are such supporters of hers,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And
how many men are such
how,
supporters of hers.
how many men, how many Black, I mean, I think especially when you talk about guys who really love basketball,
Mhm.
that's all they're concerned about. I mean, they like, and of course, a lot of them, unfortunately, a lot of people are caught up in the whole race thing and all
Yeah.
that. But the people who are just like Caitlin, I'm just here for the basketball. They like they like good looking basketball, and
Mhm.
she brings something that has simply not been there in the women's game to the degree that she has it or in the way that she has it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of amazing WNBA players. They always have been in 27 years. And yet not one of them has been able, black or white,
Mhm.
to move the needle. But no one has had the speed, the long distance shot, the passing, and the media savvy, the whole package she brings. But men like high, if you're not going to be able to dunk, you better be able to shoot it from way out, and you better be able to pass the heck out of that ball to
Yeah.
grab attention. That's the
Yeah.
times we're living in. I got too many other things vying for my attention. I need a reason to watch.
Yeah.
Gives the reason to watch.
Very, very good. Very well stated. And there are so many things we could talk about as it relates to basketball. And since we both love it, it's just a fun topic and conversation. And let's talk about leadership for a second.
Yes.
So it translates, because there's leadership, of course. We could talk about coaching, and we could talk about how people are guided. And I know you and I both listened to my podcast interview with Carla Christofferson, who was one of the early
Yeah.
owners of the LA Sparks. And she was saying that Caitlin, because we talked about Caitlin a little bit, has had a coach or a psychologist that she's been working with
Yeah.
throughout the course of her whole career. And there was actually a documentary about, no, it wasn't a documentary. It was a really long article. Did you read that article about Caitlin Clark in, I don't even remember which publication it was. And it was like 12 pages. It was really long.
Wow.
And it talked about her and her coaching and her parenting and the things that she's learned from mentors in her life.
Mm,
That doesn't happen overnight. And there's
no.
leadership.
Right. Leadership is leadership, to quote John Maxwell, leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. So most of us, we can look back in our lives, whether if it was a teacher or if it was a pastor, or if it was a community member, a neighbor, we can think of someone who influenced our life in such a way. And to this day, we still carry a part of those people with us.
Mhm.
You cannot overestimate good leadership.
Yeah. And I love how he says it's influence, because
Mhm.
influence doesn't necessarily mean positive or negative. I mean, it could be either. I could just determine from a poor coach what not to be. And that
Absolutely.
influence is still there. I get the choice to determine how I want to live my life based on that influence.
Excellent point. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so we know, because you and I both know Maxwell. I had the opportunity to meet him while I was with Keller Williams back a few years ago. And his influence is a positive influence. His books are about positive, leadership characteristics. So what was it about John Maxwell that called to you, that had you get involved?
Actually, I am a certified John Maxwell speaker, trainer, and coach. And I had heard of John Maxwell. Everybody had kind of heard his name, and so we knew he was, considered the leadership expert in the world, the top leadership expert in the world. But I'm a speaker, and so I was just kind of thinking and praying about how to open more doors in terms of being able to speak and to share, positive message. And then I think I saw on some social media something about the John Maxwell team. And it had to be God, because I don't usually respond to those kinds of things. You get a million of different kind of stuff. But for some reason, I'm like, I'm going to respond. I click the link, and then, you set up for a phone call. And I'm like, why am I doing this? But I did. And I got the phone call, and we talked about, okay, so what are your goals? What is it you're a speaker. He's got all these different tracks that you can go on in terms of leadership. And then next thing you know, it happens to be an open door for a great opportunity, because none of this is without cost, you
Right.
know. And so I remember talking to my pastor about it, because it was going to be money that I had to put out, but I had to weigh the whole thing. I'm going to become better at what I do. I'm going to learn from the best of the best. I already feel like I'm gifted to, but I can always learn more. I'm always learning. And so I just jumped in, and then they hook you up with the mentor. And I was so blown away. And I began to eat all of his material that you go through towards certification. And just in a couple months, I went to IMC. I decided that I was going to be to audition. You have to go through a long process to be one of the 10 that gets on stage at the International Maxwell. I might have been the first or second person who was new to John Maxwell to be chosen to be one of the people who spoke, who, you know, got to speak before 3,000. And I was the number one stage time person
Wow.
out of 10. And I had only been, but it was week after week after week of the mentorship, and you submit videos, and then they critique it, and you submit them, and you get it, and you fine tune it, and you have the semifinals, and you have quarters,
Wow.
and then finally you find out the night before, you're already at the conference the night before, that you're going to be up in the morning and that you've made it. And so I just really consumed a lot of it, and then I was able to train other people, and it's a long journey
Mhm.
of leadership, and to be able to ingest it and then to be able to share it. That's how it was. It had to be God, because like, for even just to make the click, and
Yeah,
I just felt like it was right. I felt like it was something that was for me to do and was going to help me grow.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. This is not even a fair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you have a favorite John Maxwell book?
Oh goodness. Well, I'll tell you what, because I'm such a communicator, I'm going to say Everyone Communicates, Few Connect, because it breaks down the various ways of communicating with people. So I'm going to say that, although I'm going to be bold enough to sort of disagree with John Maxwell and say, I would say, some people communicate, how did I say it? Everyone communicates. Oh man, I've forgotten how I say it. Bottom line is this: everyone doesn't communicate. That's what I'm saying. He says everyone communicates and few connect. I'm gonna say nowadays everyone does not communicate, and it is my pet peeve that people are bad at it in general, and then some people don't even do it at all. They just flat out ignore you. I wish I could remember what I used to say, but it was really, really kind of cool.
Well, you'll have to get it back to me because you're right on. People talk at each other. They
Yeah,
don't communicate.
right. This is what few people communicate, fewer connect.
Very
That's
good.
what I wanted to say. Few people communicate, fewer connect. I used to think it was just the young people because they grew up with all the social, but it's everybody.
Mhm.
We just don't communicate. We ignore people. We don't, yeah, social media has been a blessing, but I think it's hurt us in so many ways.
What I see in that is, like I said, we talk at each other. I was a communications and English major. I had a double major.
Okay.
In my communications major, part of that, they never taught me how to listen. I never had a listening course. I was taught how to speak. And
Right.
the only time I ever had an active listening course was when I volunteered as a crisis hotline volunteer
Yeah.
on the phone before we ever had any kind of, you have to learn how to listen there. But if I hadn't had that opportunity, I don't think I would have learned active listening. Where do we
That's
learn them?
That's really deep. You know what? I've never thought about that piece. I mean, I know we need to listen, but when you say I've never taken a listening course, I would have thought, well, who would sign up for that, right? But yeah, it really is a missing piece of communication. Like you, we want to know how to speak so that we're listened to, right? Excellent point.
Well, they're listening. I mean, I suppose they're hearing, let's say,
Hearing.
my ears work. I can hear things. We hear to speak, not to process.
True.
The critical thinking skills that can come from listening as a skill you can perfect, or not even perfect, master, get better at, oh my gosh, just imagine what could happen if we actually thought things through instead
Yeah.
of just
Yeah.
regurgitating things.
And listen. That was one of the things that frustrated me about teaching. I'm like, you don't listen. I just said, and so they're like, yeah, but you're assuming I was actually listening to you.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, and we can fake it so well. because we're
True.
not in touch with I call it your viscera, your gut, what your gut says. I
Mhm.
kind of know when people are faking listening. I mean, I kind of know. Even on Zoom calls, I
Mhm.
kind of know.
Well, I hope you don't know that from me.
Not you and not me, because we're here in this conversation. One
Yeah.
thing I learned from Lisa Bluter, Caitlin Clark, and Kate Martin's coach, who has told each of them on separate occasions, because I've heard it said by each of them, be where your feet are. And
Wow.
that is so powerful because you're not thinking about all these other things and all these other places you could be when you are present. And that's where listening comes in, because
Yeah,
I'm present here with you.
exactly. That's good. Listen. Listen. Yeah, that's
And did
good.
you know that listen and silent are the same letters, just rearranged?
Okay.
Listen, silent.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
But that doesn't sell. It doesn't sell when if you sat on your podcast and just went like this.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about I used to have a student, he would like to actually I talked about this student in terms
Dave, is it Dave?
yeah, yeah. I talked about Dave in terms of the comment he made about basketball, but Dave was an interesting communicator. Actually, he liked to blow smoke. He was a nice kid, but Dave was very good at you ask a question and he would just like he's really processing and thinking. He wasn't. What Dave was doing was hoping you would move on. And there's only so much of time you can spend on and so generally I would be like, okay, Dave, moving on,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
One day I decided I'm gonna call him out on it because he ain't thinking about nothing, right? And so I asked Dave a question and he went into the whole same thing. And I just made up my mind. I'm just gonna sit here and wait. I'm gonna listen to Dave. So he was about to panic because I didn't do my usual, okay, you, Sally, what do you think? I just sat there waiting, listening. And now probably knowing me, I just probably bust out laughing at some point. But yeah, we're all like, we're moving on, we're moving on, we're moving on. And I was like, I'm just gonna listen to you just make sense of this whole thing. I,
Mhm,
I went
mhm.
off on a tangent, but yeah, I was
No,
just
that's great because that's the space. That's the listening space that people don't have.
right.
We're
Yeah.
so quick. We're a microwave society. We don't allow people time to process because moving on, we have to do that. What
Yeah.
would happen if in corporations and organizations and basketball teams, people would say, here, give me your observation about this. And then we would wait.
Mhm. Right. Now notice that you said then we would wait and there's a little bit of silence. Now that I learned this even through John Maxwell doing masterminds, for
Mhm.
example, or coaching people, that you have to be comfortable with the silence. Too often, and I see parents do it with little children, and teachers do it too, and I've done it myself. That silence, no, if we ask a question and we don't get a response right away, we jump in and say, well, let me rephrase it. Or we move on and we want to give clarity to it and we do all that. We're trained to be comfortable with the silence and allow them to think it through. And it does take time and it takes patience. And you've got to be comfortable enough in your own skin to handle the silence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Children with parents, though, we just want to complete their sentences for them instead of letting them reach into their vocabulary and find the right word. It's not easy, though.
It's not easy. And that's where I think you and I probably have a huge opportunity with the work we're doing in the world to support people in critical thinking and listening. Because if it's not being offered other places, why couldn't we do that and help them be better at what you and I have admitted we're not great at all the time because we tend to jump in. I mean, podcasting would be really terrible if we didn't fill the silence with
You're
something.
right. Yeah, yeah. Nobody's going to tune in for silence, right? Yeah,
No, right?
yeah.
Exactly.
So,
So
but there's a
we have,
time and place for everything. Yeah.
yeah. And in this conversation you and I are having, I mean, if people are watching it, because there's a video version and there will be an audio version as well. So on the audio version, you don't have the opportunity to see. But there's a lot of different ways to communicate, and nonverbal does a lot in the communication. And I feel like you are present with me, even though we're many miles apart. We're here in video form, and you are giving me great nonverbal feedback. You're nodding right now, and that's encouraging me to go on. And I think you and I both are doing that for each other, which is making us be better communicators.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You feed off of each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that energy, I've learned this during COVID, during the Zoom era, where we had nothing else.
The
And
Zoom here, that's good. Yeah.
I had to learn that, or I ended up learning that energy is non-geographic. I
Mm.
feel your energy in Missouri. I'm in North Dakota. It doesn't really matter the geography. I still feel connected to you. I feel connected to you, and I watch you even before you knew I existed in the world. I still felt connected to you because I share your ideas about things, and I'm like, yes, yes. I loved it when you had the TV going in the background and you'd be like, the game's going on. I mean, the things that
Yeah.
you've evolved in the last few months in the way you do your podcast.
Yeah, I'm learning.
Yeah.
It's a learning process, overall. I'm kind of just me, but there's so much more. I mean, this is like a podcast. I mean, people are serious about their podcasts that they tune into, like for real. And it can become a
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're learning and you're growing and you're listening, and people let you know that they like what you're doing, and they even give you suggestions, like, that you're like, okay, it's a community. It can be. And I'm fascinated by it, and I hope to continue to grow,
Yeah.
uh and see what happens. And
Well, you've got advertisers now. You've got supporters. You've got people. You're doing advertisements.
oh, I've been doing advertisements.
Have
that,
you? I haven't noticed that as
Oh,
much.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been doing advertisements for some time, but I was I was only doing, until the last couple of months, I only did one episode a week.
Ah,
So it's YouTube and all the podcast platforms. And so I was doing one a week, and then when I started doing advertising, it would be obviously on that one.
ah,
And then when I decided that I was going to do more basketball, because people were like, we want to see more of this. I didn't intend to be doing as much as I'm doing,
ah.
but there's so much to be done and there's so much interest. And so I said, okay, I still work. Like some people, I mean, I counted one guy who does a lot of Caitlin Clark stuff. I counted one day, the 24-hour period. I counted 18 videos that he had done. So my guess is that's his whole job. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't have another job.
Is that Mick Talks Hoops?
Yeah, it's Caitlin. It's constant Caitlin
Yeah.
Clark material, other aspects of the WNBA, but mostly
Yeah.
Caitlin Clark.
Mhm.
And he's got a lot of subscribers, and it's like it's constant. And I'm thinking it takes a lot of time just to do one, because you're editing it. I mean, it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so I was doing the advertising just on that once a week.
Okay.
And then when I started doing more, I don't put everything that's on YouTube on the podcast platforms.
Hmm.
Not everything goes there. So the YouTube channel is really where a lot of the basketball content remains.
Yeah. Golly, there's a lot to learn. How did you learn all of that?
You know what, Jody, I just jump in and try it. I'm not afraid to try stuff. Before then, this is how I did my podcast. I had my phone before I was doing YouTube, because I'm a part of the BMG network. Kenny Burns runs that, and there are a few podcasters on there. And I wasn't doing YouTube. We had a Zoom meeting, speaking of Zoom, and people were like, well, Adrienne, I really think that you should take your podcast and put it on YouTube also, because you're so animated.
Yeah, you
And
are.
I was just like, oh, okay. And I wasn't, even then, it wasn't like a picture of me. I think when I first started, I think it was just the audio. I think I'm trying to remember. But this is how I used to do my podcast. I'd hold my phone and hit record and just talk.
Okay.
And people were like, how's the sound as clear as it is? I don't know. That's just what I mean. And I just learned, like, trying to do those thumbnails that everybody's doing.
Yeah.
Like somebody sent me an email. Hey, I do thumbnails. Let me send you my portfolio. I was like, I don't have any extra money to give out. Let me see if I can figure it out.
Yeah.
And I ask questions, Jody,
Mm-hmm.
much to the chagrin of many people who have to be the recipients of my question. But I do. And I just always want to learn.
Mhm. Yeah.
I want to learn what I want to learn. Let me be honest. There are certain things I don't want to learn. There are
Mm,
certain things I want somebody else to do.
yeah,
If they can do it for me, that's fine. But what I'm interested in, I'm willing to learn.
that's great. Well, leverage is part of leadership, isn't it? I mean, when you learn to leverage your weaknesses instead of focusing on it,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There are things that I do well. I'm usually like this. I don't, I I know what I do well. I also know what I don't do
Mhm.
well and that I'm not interested in doing. Like
Yeah.
some people are like, oh, you can figure it out. I'm like, but I don't want to figure that out.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I got enough on my hands with what I do well. I want to do better.
Yeah. Well, tell me about your lives, because is that new to you?
The YouTube lives. Yes, because I was getting comments in the community. Wow, I wish you would go live for a game. And I'm like, I'm not able to go live for a game. Like that's my thought, right? Because yeah, I played, yeah, I coached. Well, when I listen to these lives, I mean, when I'm looking at a game, there's a lot going on.
Mhm.
And there's something to be able to step back afterwards and assess. But in the moment of it, I'm just like, I don't think I want to do that. And then one day, people are like, we really want to see you do that. We really want to, and I even had one person say to me that, there are a lot of guys who are doing it, and she's a woman, and I think she's new to the game. I think she's like, it would just kind of be fun, and it would help me if another woman was doing it, even after a game, and we could ask questions and stuff. One day, I didn't do it first half. I think I just decided at halftime, I'm just gonna do it. Like,
Wow.
why not? Right? I'm just gonna figure it out and press the button and just start talking about the game, and we can just hang out.
Uh,
And that's how it started. And then that was with the live games.
yeah.
And then the conversations, I did one late last night. And honestly, I did it that way last night because I wasn't planning on doing one.
Mm.
And I was too tired to be afterwards. I got to sit there and edit the whole thing because I'm so picky. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't feel like being bothered with that afterwards. So let's just talk.
And that's the cool part about, I guess I'm making an excuse, but my whole platform is Get Real. And
Mhm.
so I feel like editing too much
Right.
takes away from being real, which gives me an excuse for just going with whatever it is. And
Yes.
and so I haven't done a ton of editing the way you do. I love the way you edit, and I love the way you add the clips from the game. How do you do that? Do you have to get permission, or how do you do that?
Well, if I do, you have to, it's amazing because there are copyright issues.
Yeah.
And so I want to know how some of these podcasters manage to do that, because when you upload to YouTube, it runs the check for
Yep.
the copyright if you're being monetized. Now, if someone is not at the point of being monetized, it's okay generally, because what will happen is it'll say there's a copyright violation, but the owner allows it to be used.
Mm,
So there are no strikes, they call them, against your channel.
okay.
So there's that. If you want to be monetized, if you've met the criteria to be monetized and it goes through the check, it will still say the same thing. Owner allows it to be used, but you cannot be monetized. So
Oh.
I watch a lot of these people. I'm sure they're being monetized for it, but they find these clips on various places.
Mm.
A lot of them I notice go to Twitter, and they'll find somebody on Twitter, and somehow, maybe because they didn't also post that on YouTube, it's a very tricky process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can be very frustrating if you do a whole recording and then you upload it and then you get this cannot, you can't show this, or it's not. And so it's a time consuming process of trying to figure all that out. And I'm still trying to figure it out. But people do it all the time. So they're just finding ways and finding material in different places, I
Mm.
guess.
Okay. How
I
long?
would do more. Listen, I would do more, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna do more because,
Okay.
like I said, I'll do more even if I wasn't monetized. There, whatever.
Yeah.
But I would do even more of that if I didn't have to run into the whole YouTube problem with that.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to edit typically? Any
A,
particular?
a long time. I mean, it depends on what it is, but uh it could take me an hour or more to, I've probably done 3. I did, I did a video the other day, and I recorded the whole thing, and it probably took me an hour and a half to do this video, recording, editing. And then I went to upload it, and there were 48 minutes that YouTube said it's going to block out the whole video.
Oh,
So after doing that, I had to then go back and then try to find a way to chop out that part, but I still wanted the audio because I'm talking about it already,
right.
but I can't show it. And so now I got to figure out how to do that. So now I'm spending all this time figuring out how to extract audio and then just put a still picture in and
Oh.
and so a video that was probably 15 minutes probably took me 3 hours.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Oh yeah.
But it is cool though. And as you said, if it monetizes and there's a way to actually create some kind of income from it, that's great.
Yeah, it is. And when I reached that point of, okay, you can monetize, I wasn't looking for that. Like that, what I didn't even know what I thought the criteria was so way, it just was out of my mind. Like one day I'm like, I should probably check when the subscribers started growing. I'm like, I should probably look into how these people monetize, and I looked into it and they've got the criteria. And then I was like, oh, I've met the criteria. But then I was still doing my business. And I was like, Adrienne, you're probably being silly by not
Yeah.
looking into it. And then I started that process. But yeah, it wasn't on my thought. I just
Yeah.
love to do what I do, and I just did it.
Yeah.
It wasn't about, so I've had people early on even say, oh, you're just trying to get clicks and get paid. I was like, I haven't gotten a dime. I don't know what you're talking about, but thanks for reminding me to look into it.
Right, exactly. So what's your gig? Like what do you do most that makes a living? Are you
Oh,
speaking mostly or
I'm an
is
editor.
it
I'm an editor.
editor? Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
what do you edit?
I work for a popular, well-known politics and news website.
Okay.
I'm editing articles from our writers.
Okay.
That's my that's what I
Your
do.
regular job, yeah.
Yeah, that's my job.
Okay, gotcha. Well, and because everybody asks me that too. How do you pay the bills? Like, what do you do? Is it because I do speaking too, and there are a lot of moving parts to doing the things we're doing. I think as coaches and speakers and authors and things like that. So it is can be kind of tricky.
And now, and I also write. So I have my
Yeah,
you know, um, so I have a few subscribers, but I'm certainly not paying the bills with that, though I
right.
appreciate you have,
I'm
who are
look.
subscribed.
Yeah, I'm looking at your bio here to just tell people you're not with the newspaper anymore, right?
No, I'm not with the newspaper. And I was never an employee of the newspaper,
Okay.
but I had the column, and so
Um,
they would compensate me for my
got
work.
it, got
I
it.
had been on the editorial board. Yeah.
But your My View, My Voice at AdrienneRossColumn.com.
Yeah, that I don't have that anymore. My writing is at adrienneross.substack.com. So I moved over to Substack about maybe a year and a half ago now.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So,
we could talk forever. I know we could talk forever. My internet connection just came on and said it's unstable because I have a storm outside right now, I think.
oh,
So I want to make sure I don't lose you. But if people wanted to find you, follow you, what's the best way for them to do that, Adrienne?
okay. Well, like we said, my writing is at adrienneross.substack.com.
Okay.
And obviously on YouTube, it is the Adrienne Ross Show.
Mhm.
And again, we talk about a plethora of things, but we really have been diving into basketball and all that comes with it. But from A to Z, Adrienne is on it. So that's the Adrienne Ross Show. And it's also the podcast, the Adrienne Ross Show, on the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google
Yep.
Podcasts, all
Yep.
of that. And, social media. I don't want to give out all that information, but I'm
Yep.
Adrienne Ross on social media. And I think I have that covered. And my website, adriennerosscom.com.
Okay. AdrienneRossCom.com. I will make sure all of that is in the show notes.
Excellent.
Rosscom.com. I'm writing myself a note to
Yes.
remember. So follow Adrienne on YouTube. Find her. She's delightful. I remember that Wednesday night when you were at church and you couldn't watch the game and you had to come home late and you had to watch the game and then you had to upload. And I'm like, how are you doing this? 'Cause I was
Yes.
watching that one and I thought this is really late.
It
Um,
was so late, like last night too. That one was even later. Yeah, it was. I don't sleep as much as I should.
right? How can you? There's just too much
Yeah,
life to live.
it's true.
But
It's true.
Adrienne, this has been a joy, and I so appreciate you taking the time to be with me. I really seriously do feel a little bit like a fangirl. So thank you for being with
No,
me.
Jody, thank you so much. I was honored to get your invitation. I've enjoyed our conversation. Like you said, we probably could talk forever.
But
Thank you so
we
much.
will. I hope we can stay connected.
All
So
right. All
thank you
right.
so much. And as always, everybody, just go get real because you'll find that people are attracted to your realness and not your fakeness. And then everything gets so much easier.
So
So
true.
just go get real, everybody.
Good word. Thank you. God
Thanks.
bless
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Don't leave me. Hang on.